If you've ever struggled with finding the time and right process to grow your Etsy print on demand shop, or if you're not sure how to maximize the time you do have, welcome to part 6 of the video series where we change all of that. Today's time block is all about the process of finalizing the products in Etsy that are waiting for us after we created them in Printify in the last batch of work in part 5. And all of this has been based on the research and designing that we did in previous sessions together. So we are in the home stretch. If you're just joining in, the purpose of this series is to cover how I spend my time in what I call time blocks and the very intentional activities that I accomplish in these small pockets of time in order to move my shop forward not only quickly, but effectively. These have been long and intense videos as I bring you on an over-the-shoulder view of what I do in these different time blocks and batches. And that was very intentional. I firmly believe that so many of the fast and quick approaches to starting a print-on-demand business don't actually work unless you understand the nuances that go into leveraging research, demand, and efficiencies when creating designs and products in order to actually make them successful. If you skip over the important stuff because it's too boring or it takes too long, then you are probably wasting your time because it will be a constant uphill battle. That is why this series has been all about taking a deep dive into my full process with no stone left unturned. This included researching trends, designs, and keywords, then using that research as the basis for designs, then getting all of those designs into mockups super efficiently, and then finally getting them actually created with my print-on-demand provider, and then finally listed on Etsy. If you're new to my channel, this is going to be a game changer in your Etsy growth workflow. And if you've been with me for a while and saw the original version of this series, this has been a bit of a reboot with a completely new niche, new design inspiration, and updated processes to reflect the many changes that have occurred since the last edition in 2023. So if you haven't already, make sure you tap the subscribe button and have notifications turned on so that you don't miss any of the remaining episodes. In case we haven't met yet, my name is Mandy, founder of Simply Thrive, a one-of-a-kind membership for print-on-demand sellers with a bit of a holistic approach and intentional blend of strategy, mindset, and action to help you confidently tackle your goals, overcome challenges, and stay consistent despite all those shiny little objects. I'm also a busy boy mom, an active top 1% seller on Etsy, and have generated over $1 million in revenue as an online business owner, primarily with both handmade and print-on-demand businesses. I've spent years growing them, and so now I am here with one simple mission, and that is to provide you with strategies to simplify the journey so that you can stop the overwhelm and start thriving in your own online business. Now, as a short recap from the last few videos, my focus on the research was looking at the 30th birthday niche from my niche playbook. We validated the demand on Etsy and within eRank in terms of search volume and the existence of top sellers. Then we looked more intentionally at trending styles, market demand on Etsy based on keyword searches, as well as products that are currently selling. I took you behind the scenes in the design and mock-up batching videos while I batch created 12 brand new designs related to all the research we did in that first block of time, and then batched mock-ups for all those designs in Canva. And then in the last video, I walked you through how I created each of those products in Printify so that all of them will sync automatically to Etsy as we start getting orders. For the purposes of this series, I broke down the listing phase into 2 parts because again, when I'm doing my time blocks, I am focused on staying in one place and repeating the same steps over and over again for a particular batch as much as possible. The beauty of time blocking and breaking down tasks into different segments is that it ensures that you can focus on one particular part of the process much more efficiently. When you are constantly switching back and forth between tasks, sometimes called task switching, or trying to do it all at once with multitasking, studies show that you are actually anywhere between 40 to 80% less productive because of the effort required mentally to momentarily pause and shift between tasks. So, by not hopping back and forth between systems, you can move a lot faster and accomplish more because you get really fast at those steps, which means whether you have small blocks of time or bigger blocks of time available in your day, this ensures you can still move your shop forward strategically. Since we got most of the basis for our listings created last time in Printify, and they're now waiting for us in Etsy, today we'll be focused on getting all of those listings finalized and published so that by the end of this video, I will have 12 new complete listings added to this shop and ready for customers to start buying them. If you're looking for my best practices when it comes to ensuring your shop and listings are optimized for Etsy's ranking and conversion, I'll leave a link for you in the description so that you can grab my free cheat sheet. That will be helpful if you miss any of the little parts along the way, but you'll also see several of the steps infused in today's batching as well. Now, let's dive in with part 6 and finish off these listings, shall we? Now, as I head into Etsy, I also want to make sure I've got a few things organized. I have my mockup folder that I will have open and ready to go. Remember, these are all of my mockup files and listing videos for each of the individual designs. And then remember, in our last video, I saved all of my products in Printify as hidden listings, which means that they are now published to this shop on Etsy, but they're waiting for me over here in the drafts folder until I can finish them. So now it's simply a matter of adding the mockups, the listing video, and a few other finishing touches so that these are ready to go. So we'll start with the first one. As you scroll through, you'll see the details that are already done from our Printify session. Then I'm going to simply start at the top as I go. I'm going to delete that first mockup that's in there, and now I want to add my photos and video. I'm going to go into my mockups, and this is my Club 30 design. So if I double click on this, notice I've got my mockups and my listing video. So when I select all of these, including the video, including all 10 mockups, and click on open, Etsy is going to automatically grab these and know where to place the mockups, and it's going to upload the video at the same time. Again, it's saving that extra little step by taking time when we were saving all of our mockups and our listing video in a batch all at the same time. I want my first image here, which is your primary image. That is the thumbnail that customers will see as they're scrolling on Etsy. I want to make sure that that first one really complements the design well and then also really fits the aesthetic to attract customers. In this particular case, since this is a front and back design, I'm going to want to make sure I choose one that shows both in that initial thumbnail. And when I'm thinking about customers scrolling, I also want to make sure I choose one that shows the design the best. So in this case, I'm going to choose the pepper one. Number one, I know that pepper is a very in-demand color. The other one could potentially be this ivory. And what I would probably do in this situation is I might have one listing highlighting this darker high contrast color, and then I might duplicate this listing down the road and swap it out and show this lighter ivory color as like an A/B test, meaning I can use two different listings of the same product to really test and see which ones convert best, which ones result in the customer clicking on that listing more, and then buying from that listing. And you can tell that sometimes simply by having two significantly different mock-ups as that first thumbnail. Now, I don't go crazy and I don't do this for every single color, but if you've got a situation like that where you do have one that's on a very dark color and another one in that same listing that's a very light color, it can be a great way to test that theory out. So as I scroll, you may need to adjust this thumbnail. If you do, you'll simply click on adjust and you can move that around. This actually works okay for me as is because the 1995, that pocket design is visible, and because that back design is large enough, it is visible and clear from that thumbnail. If it's not, if the customer is going to have to squint or click on that listing too much just to see that design, you might need to zoom in just a little bit. I'm typically looking to make sure it's clear from this visual what it is. If you zoom in too far, they may not know if it's a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. So those are some of the things that I think about when I am adjusting that thumbnail. Our description is done. Our pricing, inventory, SKUs, all of that is done. So next, I want to go into variations. When we click on Manage Variations, this is where I'm linking the color of the product to the color that's listed in that variations drop down. And by doing this, what happens is when I turn on link photos to this variation, I will then choose the mock-up, the listing photo that's associated with that color. Because then what happens is when a customer is inside the listing and trying to decide which color do I like, which color is which, when they select that color from the drop-down, the corresponding listing photo will also change and it will swap out and show them which color it is. So by default, if they click on the listing and it's showing that first one, so it's going to show whatever that first thumbnail is, which is pepper, and they click on espresso in the drop down, they're like, I'm not sure which one that is. When they select it, that listing photo in the listing will change to that photo. And this just helps to reaffirm for that customer, number one, what the color is, and number two, it allows them to see that color with that design. And I find by having those mock-ups shown for each color, this is also why I don't offer a ton of colors, because I want every single color to have a photo in the listing. This helps ensure that the customer can see that. And I find that this helps with conversion because customers are far more likely to buy and purchase a product when they can see what it's going to actually look like. Now, when we get down to details, this is where you need to change that and you'll need to update a few details. First is who made it. Now, this particular area has mixed opinions. Some say that it should be I did, some say that it should be another company or person. Now, I started with print on demand coming from the handmade side of things, and it would never occur to me to claim that I'm making the product itself, because I'm not. I'm designing it, which is what we select when we set up our production partners in Etsy under our shop settings, but I do not make the final product in the way that I believe Etsy intends for this to be used. If you leave it as I did, you'll notice that the options available to then choose from to demonstrate how you make it aren't entirely helpful either. The closest you'll find for print on demand is this third one, which is that it's an item that my shop alters. But even that alludes to something that you, or more often than not, a handmade seller is creating or altering, such as heat pressing a vinyl decal design onto a pre-made t-shirt. In our case, the print on demand provider is doing that for us. We are not making that alteration. Now, this section is not required at the moment, but it very likely could be down the road. So I personally have for years chosen another company or person. That gets rid of that middle section and then simply leaves us with identifying who our production partner is. And so ultimately, when I click on that, this is where I've got my SwiftPod already set up under that. So I will select that and choose Done. Now, ultimately, I've talked to lots of sellers, including lots of fellow top sellers and influencers on other channels that you probably know. And the consensus is that as long as you are identifying and declaring your production partner, that's the most important part, because that's where you specify that you have a hand in the design part of the process, which is required if you are a print-on-demand seller where somebody else is making and fulfilling the actual product. So either way, once you've filled out this section with whatever you prefer, go ahead and click on Apply. Then I double check the category that Etsy has attributed to this. Every great once in a while, they'll throw in something weird or something that's not quite accurate, and I'll change it. And if you need to do that, you can simply start typing your product in here. But t-shirts is fine for this one. Then we get to attributes. These are essentially additional details about your product. For the primary color for apparel, I typically use these to identify different design colors that may be predominant. So for this one, for example, I might choose pink. Depending on the product you are selling, if for example, it's a white mug and it's only a white mug that you're selling, you might just choose white, and then a secondary color could be your design. But essentially, these are intended as characteristics of your product so that if a customer is filtering by them, this can be used to help lead them to your product. If you've got size or sustainability that applies to your product, you can choose that. I know for mugs, for example, you can choose different sizing options. For apparel, I then go down to sleeve length, and for this one, I'll choose short sleeve, crew neck. Clothing style is going to refer, in this particular case, to your design typically. So for this one, I'm probably going to go, since it's more of an athletic style design with the varsity lettering, I'll go with athletic. Essentially, you just want to try and pick whichever one is closest. Then when we get down to occasion or holiday, this is an area where I will sometimes see sellers choose completely irrelevant options here. And Etsy tells us not to do this. They specifically say that if it's not for a specific occasion or holiday, don't just randomly add it. So in this particular case, for an occasion, I would select birthday, because these are all going to specifically be for birthday related products. And then for graphic, depending on the type of product, sometimes you will see different options here. But if there is one that is specific to your design itself, then you can choose that here as well. Typically, if there isn't one that necessarily specifically fits with a theme, in this case, Club 30 isn't necessarily one of these other, religious or nautical type of themes. So in that case, sometimes I will simply choose phrase and saying, just to have something there. Again, it depends on what it is. There have been times where I have left this blank too if something just really does not fit. When we get down to tags, I typically do a quick double check to make sure all 13 are still there. Every great once in a while, if I miscount on the length of the tag, or if I had like a dash or something like that come over. In this particular case, I had 2 that dropped off, and when I looked in Printify, I had a couple that were just a little bit too long. So one of them was just a Comfort Colors shirt. So I tend to add that in because I do find that for several niches, some people are specifically looking for comfort colors. So I like to have that in as a tag. It's also in my title. And then another tag that dropped off just for length was a best friend 30th gift, was a little bit too long. So I'm just going to shorten it a little bit and say best friend 30th, because it could be for a best friend's 30th birthday, it could be for a gift. There are a variety of ways that Etsy could mix and match with this. And I have gift in other areas. So again, the way Etsy's algorithm works is that while it prefers exact matches when possible to help improve where your listing ranks in the search results, it will also take some liberties to try and mix and match with different terms to try and get your listing in front of the right customers. So we'll add that in, and now we have all 13. Our shipping should already be selected based on what we chose in Printify, so I just double check that that one's right, especially for me since I tend to sell both t-shirts and sweatshirts and I have them set up under different shipping profiles. Every once in a while I'll accidentally select the wrong one, so I just double check to make sure it's the one that I intended in terms of a shipping profile. We don't need item weight and size. That's typically for handmade sellers who are using weighted shipping prices where it will automatically calculate. We don't need customs information either because, again, we're not doing any of our own shipping, so we don't need that information there. Return policy, if you only have one, it will default to that, so I just make sure that that's turned on. And then shop section, if you already have a section created for the niche that you are adding in, you can simply select it. I haven't added one in for this particular niche yet, so I am going to add in 30th birthday, and I want to take advantage of some keywords here, so we'll say gifts as well. And so that will then be added to our shop as a brand new section, and when we do the subsequent listings from here, we can simply now select that one going forward. I always recommend setting up your sections based on the different niches and different themes that you are selling for instead of specific product types, especially if you are creating more of a general shop. And this is because when you think about customer behavior, most of the time, if they are making it to your shop, they are doing so from an Etsy search. And even if they're returning to your shop, it was likely based on an item that was specific to their exact search or their different theme or niche or recipient that they were looking for. And so when they come to your shop, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to find other related items to that niche, to that theme that they bought for or searched for in the first place. If you have a mishmash of different niches and a mishmash of different products, and you're trying to sort them all by product type, that means that the customer is typically going to then be digging through each of those to find what they want, or they're going to have to go to the search bar to find it. And again, each of these extra little things that a customer needs to do to find what they're looking for is an opportunity for them to click away from your shop. So just one of those little things that I always recommend is to have your shop sections set up by those different niches or themes as much as possible. If you want to set this up as a featured listing, you can choose up to 4 of them that show on your shop's main homepage. Now keep in mind, if you select to feature it for a bunch of different listings, more than 4, only 4 will show up at a time, so you'd have to edit that on your shop homepage. But if you want to highlight that, this is where you could do that. I typically do it from the listing view, not from here though. So I typically leave that turned off. This is also a place that if you have ads turned on and activated for your shop, you will see the option here to turn them on for this listing. I do not have ads turned on for this shop because it is just one of my test shops, so I don't have that visible here. But if you are running ads, I am someone who does run ads on new listings so that I can get them out of the algorithm so that I can get some initial views and data faster to see if it's going to be a listing that pops off faster than others. I'll let that run on a new listing for a little bit of time, typically 30 days. And if it doesn't sell right away and it's eating up my ads, I'll turn it off at that point. But I do tend to add them on brand new listings just so that I can start getting some data faster. If you only prefer to run ads only on items that have sold for you already, then you would simply leave that off at this point. And then finally, for the renewal, I always set to automatic. It'll default to manual. I personally want it to automatically renew, and if it's not selling, I let it renew at least a few times before I decide whether or not to deactivate it. Sometimes I will swap out mockups or change a few keywords, but essentially I want it to live out on the algorithm and in my shop for a period of time. I've literally had listings suddenly take off after being dormant for many months and renewals and not getting any traction right away. And then suddenly it gets a little boost with a renewal and start selling on repeat. So I never give up on a listing until it's spent some time out on Etsy in their algorithm to give it a fair shot. So I'll set that to automatic, and then that's it. So this one is ready to publish with changes. It's going to warn us now that we are making this active and moving it from the drafts to the active. It's now going to charge us that 20-cent listing fee. So we'll go ahead and confirm and publish. And now that will be part of our active listings. And we're ready for the next one. This country western one was our one that had personalization. So I'm going to save that till the end just because it has a few extra steps. And I'm going to knock out the rest of them that I know will go quickly. Again, I think about kind of my process and wanting to go through as much repetition as possible. So we'll go back to our downloads, and then for this one, I'm looking for my Just a Girl, and this one had the pink images on it, so we'll select that. And again, it's going to go through and add all of my listings all at once. Now this one, the default was set to white, and so from that initial listing, from that initial search page where a customer would see this, that might be a little harder for them to see exactly what it is. I wouldn't want to have a ton of customers clicking on a listing just to read what it says and then immediately clicking out of it. That can hurt my conversion over time. So instead, I'm going to pick one of the mockups that had a slightly higher contrast and go with that one. And so to do that, I'm simply dragging the mockup that I want to that first spot. I know from my research and looking out on Etsy trends in that first part of the series that espresso was one of the colors of comfort colors that is selling really well. So there's good contrast here. It looks really well with the pink in the design. So I'm going to choose this one as my main listing image. So then I can keep scrolling and we'll head down to our variations. This is where we will select and link our photos to the different variations. And so we'll go through each of them quite quickly, and then those are done. We'll change our core details, another person, made to order, select our provider, apply. Next, our primary design color is pink with our text, so we'll do that. Short sleeve crew. This particular one was pretty small, and so we kind of considered this more of a minimalist, so we can go with that. Occasion, we're still in birthday, so we'll select that one, and so I'm going to add back in a couple of our other tags that had dropped off. We'll say best friend 30th. And then since that just a girl phrase is a trending phrase and something people search for, I added that one in as well. We'll keep going. We don't need any of these since they're already shop section. We now have our 30th birthday gifts. Changes to automatic and another one done. Next, we'll go to the In My Dirty 30 era. Head right to our mockups. Grab our Dirty 30 era mockups and video. Again, this is a small design, so I want to make sure we've got some good contrast going in our primary image. I like this bay color, but it's a little harder to read. This is another one where this is a great color. This is a great mock-up. So potentially I might decide to duplicate this down the road and try one of our other mock-ups. In this particular case, I've seen that this violet color is another one that has been trending really well in terms of shirt colors. So I'm going to go with the violet. It displays that design really well and clearly. So we'll manage our variations and go through the linking process again. And as you can see, as I'm doing this repetition, it starts to go faster and faster because I'm not swapping, I'm not moving back and forth, I'm not hopping out and going into a different system. I'm just moving through the same process on repeat. And over time, a little bit of muscle memory in what you're creating allows you to move even faster, because the gestures, even with my hand on the mouse, can move even faster over time. This is another minimalist, so we'll do that. Occasion is birthday again. Graphic, we'll do phrase on this one. We're missing those same two, so I'm just going to quickly add them in. And remember, I'm using similar tags for most of these because they're all part of the same batch. I had a few different variations in there just to mix it up, but at the end of the day, there's only so many ways to say the same exact thing. So when you are doing it with this batching type of method, you're going to have a decent number of similarities. But what I love about this is that now, instead of just one or two products going out into these types of searches, I now have a whole batch of listings that are hitting the market relatively similar timing. So when Etsy starts showing them in the algorithm, there's a higher probability that at least one, if not more, of these 12 listings will start getting shown relatively quickly, because the odds are in my favor, right? And that is just another reason why I like this batching method. And again, as I go, I'm literally just selecting all the same things because all the same information applies. This one has a lot of white in the design. It also had some pink in the design. This one I might go with more of a rocker style, just because the theme of it's a bit different. We're still in birthday. So not a large animal on it, so I might choose that one. Again, just to mix up some of my variables a little bit. We've still got comfort colors in there. I still want to make sure I have that best friend tag in there, just because I think that's going to be a really relevant search for this. Shop section, 30th birthday, automatic, and publish. And each time you can see Etsy's bringing us just right back to our draft view. So again, it's just one less click that we're having to go through. And each time when I save these, remember I saved these so that I remember which design it was, so that when I'm going back to my mockups folder, it's easy for me to distinguish which one I was looking for. Again, much like our other decisions, I want one where the design is very clear what it is. So I'm going to grab the balloon in this case just to have a different color in there, and then you'll see that thumbnail loads. And again, anytime you need to zoom in a little bit, I just click on this adjust thumbnail to zoom in. But with large designs like this, you don't really need to, because remember, when Etsy is showing these in the search, it's going to crop it just a little bit anyway. So I don't want to zoom in too close. I will also say that there is a very common glitch with adjusting thumbnails. So if I zoom this in a little bit, let's see if it does it. And then I go to apply. You'll notice that nothing really happens. And that's a common glitch. So I do the best I can, and then I don't spend a whole lot of extra time worrying about it. Everything else here, I leave it as the default because that is fine for our purposes. Change this. And if you miss anything that's required, Etsy will stop you and not let you publish. So it's important to get the settings right, but if you miss something that's required, it will force you to fix it. So there is a little bit of a catch there with some of those things. But it's not going to require everything. Like, these attributes are not required. So just keep that in mind. That's why I wanted to go through and be able to show you exactly which ones I do complete. Go down to our section, edit that. Go to our next one. You can see because so much of our information we already completed on the Printify side of things. And again, each of these steps are very intentional in the way that I do them for that reason. And especially now with Printify, because you are able to complete more details, it just makes this side of the process go super, super fast. Now here's another one where I do have a few different options. This one I'm gonna go with moss just because it works really well with, remember this has that green interior color on the lettering for dirty. So I'm going to try that one first. And I would say, you know, if this listing doesn't sell within a few months, if this were my shop and I was keeping up with this on a regular basis for this shop, I would be coming back and potentially trying out a different mock-up, or I would duplicate the listing and try one of the other colors. Again, I don't make a listing for every single color. I do it based on the options that are likely going to be the most viable based on what I'm seeing as trending colors in the marketplace. Also, whether or not there is kind of a light and dark version, as well as if I see that a particular listing is getting some decent traction, I will swap out that first listing photo to see if not only can I get good traction, but then start getting more conversion, meaning more people interested, clicking in, and then buying based on having a different first listing image. Because statistically, most people buy the first thing that they see. They're attracted to that first listing photo. And I find that more often than not, the color and the style that's shown there is what they end up buying most of the time. And so that's why having different options, doing some A/B testing in that way can be helpful to ultimately see what is the data telling you and where can it help you make some different decisions. This one I'm going to change it up a little bit because I want to make sure I have a cocktail tag in there. So I'm actually going to do cocktail theme for this one. And I'm going to add in the shorthand B-Day, again, just for something different that when I think about the customer who's going to be potentially buying this and who they actually are, what are they searching for? It might be someone looking for that theme for their birthday. And so sometimes people use that shorthand B-Day. It has the cocktail, even though it's specific to martinis. I had that up here. So again, just thinking about what are those different ways that a customer is going to be searching for an item like this. So we'll publish that one. And again, notice how much faster this part is going and how quickly I'm getting these new listings finalized and up and ready. That is where this batching and where this process comes in so handy. So we're at another one where there's lots of, I think in my mind, good options here. I find that this pepper color really makes those front colors stand out the most. So I'm going to choose this one as my main listing photo and we'll keep going. And then we'll go in and link all of our variations and then go to our next section, another company. This one, we have a lot of different colors. We made almost a rainbow, so I'm gonna go with rainbow. And then we did have some black in there, so I'll choose black. Get all of our attributes set up. This one had more color to it, so instead of minimalist, I'm gonna go with boho and hippie on this one. And again, it's just one of those extra little variations that's different from our last one because Etsy is going to basically treat these attributes as almost like additional tags in your listing. So that's where having some variation, again, where it makes sense to, can be helpful. So we'll do something similar. I'm going to do cocktail theme again. And I want this to still be in that best friend 30th realm. section, automatic, and publish. Next is our Las Vegas design, and we only have a few left. This one only had a few different colors, so we don't have as many mock-ups on this particular one. I know that Ivory has been doing really well with this particular design style, so I'm going to choose Ivory as my main listing color so that it's, again, attracting customers and converting based on data that we're seeing in the marketplace. So we'll keep going. Manage variations. We only have a few to pick from here, so we'll choose those. Make sure we get the right white and ivory color chosen. Our design color was red, so I went with red as my primary color. I'll select these. Sometimes there's a couple of different options for our clothing style here. I'm gonna go with preppy just for something a little bit different. We're still on our birthday occasion, and we'll go with phrase. We'll add in our comfort colors. This one has several of our other themes calling attention to those, so we'll stick with our best friend 30th here. Same shop section, and publish. Next we've got our bookish theme, so we'll get those up. Our chapter 30 mock-ups. Again, a color that we see performing really well for this style is that ivory color. It's just got almost kind of a vintage aesthetic to it by using that ivory, so that contributes to the conversion. So we'll make sure that we've got that one selected. Manage variations and get those linked. Choose our color. I chose kind of an off black color in the design, but we'll choose black for now. Add in our shirt attributes. This one falls more under kind of a pinup rockabilly style typically, so I'll choose that one just for something different. We'll do birthday, graphic. This one has more of a humorous saying, so again, we'll select just something a little bit different here. We'll do comfort colors again. We have our literary references. We've got our bookish, we've got book lover. Those will show up in related searches. So for this one, I'm going to stick with best friend 30th, just to make sure it's appearing in those types of searches as well. And automatic publish. Just a few left now. We've got our coquette denim bow. Grab that one, grab our mock-ups. For this one, again, a few different options. I like the ivory still for this one. It just gives a nice view. It contrasts really well. To be clear on what it is, I would say orchid might be a runner-up. For now, I really like how the blue and the leopard print really stand out on that ivory color. So I'm going to go with that. Again, I know that ivory is a top seller and in high demand, so that makes sense. I feel good about that choice. Get those situated, and that looks good. Make our usual selection here. Primary color in this case, I have blue in there. I also have leopard print. There's no such thing as a leopard print secondary color, so I will choose black in this case. And then we'll choose one of our different styles here. I'm just gonna go with boho and hippie for now. We'll do birthday. And then our graphic technically has a phrase in it. Again, depending on what it is, what your design is, there's not always other very specific graphics. So my default is that if there are words on there and nothing else fits, I will use a phrase and saying. We've got our denim in this one. We've got leopard print in this one. We've got coquette bow, which we know is in high demand. We've got the 90s aesthetic. We've got our other different variations in there. So I'm going to, again, go with best friend as our additional tag. And we'll make sure we have our comfort colors in there just to use up all 13. And then shop section and publish. Next is our raccoon design with our feral twist. So we'll grab those. In this particular case, I might try something different. I know Orchid has been another color selling well. It contrasts still with the design itself. It makes the pink stand out a little bit more than perhaps the pink on pink. So let's try Orchid on this particular style. And then we'll link our variations. Save and apply. Go to our next one. Primary color, we've got a lot of pink in this one, so I want to make sure I select that. We've also got black, so we'll use those as our colors. And then our usual attributes. And for this one, we'll go with preppy again on this one. Occasion, birthday. I'm going to go with animal on this one. This one had our 30 and flirty phrase, so I'm going to do 30 and flirty just to catch any potential searches. I know I saw some searches related to 30, flirty, and thriving, which came from a movie. So even if people are searching for that specific phrase, our 30 and flirty will still show up in searches for that. So I'm so good with using that partial piece of it. Again, I'm not taking anything from the movie. I'm not making any connection whatsoever there. I'm just being mindful of what people are searching for and how I can leverage that in my tags without infringing on any other copyright or IP. So I'm going to add in comfort colors as part of this, and then I'm going to do best friend again. Actually, instead of best friend on this one, because we've got the raccoon holding that martini, and I know there's a lot of searches happening for the whole cocktail martini 30-30, I'm going to use martini as another one of my tags. So we'll do martini theme. Oops. Martini theme, and we'll bring in our shorthand for B-Day again so that we've got that in there. Vintage Vibe was one that originally I brought over from Printify. It was one of the suggested tags. I'm actually not as much of a fan of it as I originally was, so if I decide to change it, here's where I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring back in that best friend 30th because I do think that's going to be a better, more relevant fit for the types of customers searching for related products to this and with this theme. So we'll get that published. And now we are down to our very last one. See how fast that went? We'll grab our last one here. And remember, this was our personalized one. So we'll want to pay attention to a few extra details. Now this one, remember, I wanted to show this first one because we saw a lot of ivory and moss. And so for this one, instead of the typical ivory and moss duo that we've been seeing a lot for bachelorettes, for birthday themes, I switched it up a bit and used this ivory and espresso one. Just again, capturing that espresso aesthetic that we know is doing well. It also fits well with the Western theme and the fact that we did have some brown in our darker part of the design. So that is part of why I wanted to make sure I incorporated that and also ensure that this is our primary listing photo because remember, this shows both of the different design options. So we'll scroll through. We have, again, everything that came over from Printify is there. Now remember, this one has personalization. So we turned that on in Printify to take advantage of having that setting there. We'll hold any orders that come in so that we can immediately update the design before it goes into production. So we set all that up and all of that came through, and the instructions that we provided all came through. So you can see this is what the customer will see. It will see the instructions for the personalization. It will see the example that I put in there. And then if they have any questions or other requests, they can know to reach out. I leave this turned off in terms of make personalization optional for the buyer. You do not want it to be optional. You want them to acknowledge that personalization is necessary and they need to put something in. Even if they don't want anything, again, we have that example in here of maybe they don't want a name, they don't need the shirt that has personalization on it. That is fine. So you can add that in here. We also have location as part of our design. So that is another element that if we wanted to add that, this is where I would. And I might even add something additional after the fact, again, because I can make any final edits here at Etsy before we publish. I might decide to add in location can also be customized. You don't have a ton of space here, so I'm not going to make it long and complicated. So we'll just leave it at that. And again, I don't want this to be optional. So by default, you'll see this little X, it's turned off for optional. I leave that alone. So then we get down here, and again, this is where we'll still select our variations. We've still got all those offered. And again, regardless of what the customer sees as the example on the color, the way I have it set up is that they indicate in the personalization what they want it to say instead of the alternative of changing all these variations to be based on the phrase itself instead of the color. So there's different ways to go about having these group type of listings and personalization. I happen to like this one just because it is a little bit easier to manage. It's faster. I don't have to stop and make all the other adjustments. I don't have to stop and make new variations. So again, there's different ways of doing it. I personally like to do it that way. We did have some brown in here. We had beige. They don't have ivory specifically, so we'll do brown and beige. And then our other usual attributes. This one had more of a Western style, so I'm going to select that as my clothing style because again, those are things that the customer will not only be able to filter by, but Etsy will use those as different tags. And then we'll adjust here if we need to. There's nothing really Western themed, so I'm going to go with my default phrase and saying. We've got a few different things already captured down here in terms of search terms, so I'm just going to add in those default two that I've been adding to others just so that they show up. And then we'll choose our shop section. And now we'll go to automatic and publish our very last listing. So you can see even with this being more personalized and just having one more verification that I did in there, it still went really fast. And again, that was intentional, so I didn't have to stop and make different variations I would have otherwise had to do if I was creating them here on the Etsy side alone. So that is the rest of our listings. And so if we go back to active, you can now see that all of these are active listings in our shop and are ready to go. And you can see in our sections that all 12 are now set and ready. There are now 12 new listings in this shop. Now, some people will say, don't list a bunch in one day or spread them out over a few days so you can be active every day. My philosophy, I don't have time to drip listings. If I've got them done, they're going up. Why? Because they can't sell if they're not active listings, period. Now, this is different than creating one full listing a day or one or two listings a day. If that's what you can accomplish and your process is to complete it from start to finish, meaning from research, design, mockups to actually listing it all at once, that's different. If that's what you can get accomplished, then do that method. I'm talking about the process that we just went through, where I've got a full batch of 12 listings ready to roll. I'm not going to hold back now that they are ready, simply because we think that Etsy wants us to drip one at a time. That's not true. We all know Etsy likes active shops, but there is no rule that active means every day or that you can only list one or two a day or that somehow you'll be penalized if you skip a day or suddenly do 5 or 10 or more on one day. Active can also mean working on other listings, swapping out titles or tags, rotating mockups, responding to customers, all sorts of things. Don't get hung up on I have to spread them out or only do one day. If you've got them, list them. Now, with all of the listings done, you may be thinking that it's the end of my time blocking series, but it's not. Because here's the thing, time blocking is a productivity method. It's not just for batching listings. One of the other major time blocks that I have related to my shop is what I call my housekeeping time block. Things like customer service, processing orders, checking in on tracking progress. I make sure that I set aside time every day to focus on that and complete those activities every day. And then I will also have a video to wrap up the series and talk about how I put all of these concepts together in a day, in a week, how I set goals and make sure that I'm achieving those goals with my time blocks in order to help my business grow while also trying to minimize overwhelm. So make sure that you are subscribed and stick around for the remainder of this time blocking series. You won't want to miss them. I hope this has been helpful for you. And if you want to learn more about my strategies for thriving in your print on demand business, make sure you've got the notifications turned on for my channel so that you don't miss out on any of my free content. And in the meantime, stay focused, my friends, keep taking action, and never stop pursuing excellence in your business. Thanks for watching. I'm so glad you're here, and I'll see you in the next one.